It's the Work Talk Show, talking through how work gets done today with crazy smart guests and your hosts, DJ Waldo and Nick Westergaard. Let the Work Talk begin.
Let's go. I mean, I don't even know how this goes. I hit record.
I don't either. Do you have your questions up somewhere?
Oh, I've got questions. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Do you want me to share that doc with you again? In the chat.
In the chat. There it is.
There she is.
Thar she blows. I'm just trying to shut down some extraneous apps to recapture some bandwidth here.
Okay, my mom is texting me because her flight is delayed like 3 hours.
Oh, you got mom coming out too?
Yeah, Christine and I are going to Mexico on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
That's as random as that sounds. Her friend co-fellow from Fellowship, actually the woman who delivered both of our kids, her parents have a timeshare in Puerto Vallarta and they never use it. Like, they just don't use it. So we basically are going for free. So we're going Saturday till Wednesday. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, I got a speaking thing in Vegas in the spring, and we're going with my folks and my sister, and kind of just piling everybody up that can. So
nice.
Yeah. Hey, I thought of one thing as I was getting notes together. Do we want to, since we have no guest, and awkwardness usually abounds with us when we're without a guest, do we do three? I was just wondering, because the questions are great and the heart of the show is good. How do we end? Do we do 3 apps? Do we do shout outs and shameless plugs? What?
Beep, 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 beep. All right, so this is going to be completely unedited, but I had a little bit in here where Nick and I talked about something that we're going to talk about at the end of the show. And I didn't want to give it away, so I did cut that little portion out. Hope that's okay. Other than that, let's get back to the unedited version of the intro of how Nick and DJ roll. Work Talk Show, episode number 101. Go. Beep, 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 beep.
Good deal.
Good deal.
I'm ready.
I've been ready.
Let's do this.
Let's do it.
Hello, and welcome to the Work Talk Show, our weekly podcast on how work gets done today, featuring crazy smart guests and me, Nick Westergaard, and with me, as always,
DJ Waldo.
And DJ, we have no one on the Work Talk Show this week.
Well, we have you and me.
I guess, yeah, that's right. That was kind of low self-esteem, Nick. We have no one. We do have 2 people.
Yeah, we have it's called the founders of the show. I mean, the people that have put together 100 episodes of the Work Talk Show. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you think of us as nothing, Nick, but I think we're guests in and of ourselves.
We're seasoned podcast veterans now.
We really are. I got to tell you, when I think about it, like I think you gave me that stat once. And
now I can't.
Stelzner.
Yeah, there was
John Lee Dumas on Stelzner's podcast, or vice versa, or something about the number of podcasts that make it past 7 or 8 or something, right?
Yeah, like episode 7, and I really wish I could find that. I almost want to multitask, but I'm better than that. I will not multitask and look it up. But yeah, it was a startlingly low percentage of podcasts that make it past episode 7. And here we are doing that, 96 episodes better than that. I didn't add that right.
96 times plus 7, no.
No, I didn't. Right. I failed math.
94. So I guess we should probably tell people why it's just us and what the whole point of this show is. So, Nick and I were talking as we got to that milestone of 100, and, in 99 we had Tim Hayden and Tom Webster on, and we brought them back. And for episode 100, our big epic one, we had Chris Brogan and Ann Hanley. We brought them back. Some really great discussions and some good times and laughter. And
it's been like homecoming here at the Work Talk Show.
And so I mean, I guess, when Nick and I were talking, we said, well, what do we do now? And how do you top that? And I think we both kind of agreed that it made sense to do a show where we just talked about sort of reflection, I guess, what the past 2+ years have been like, and what we loved, what we didn't love, what we do differently, our favorite guests, our least favorite guests, which we might skip that portion.
I was going to say.
Well, you notice in the questions, I didn't put least favorite guests, but
For those that don't know, DJ is a wonderful planner of things, and it usually comes with a Google Doc shared that he puts lots of work into, and it's so well done that there's rarely anything I can add. But actually, you're misquoting yourself. Your question is not least favorite guest; it was least favorite part of the podcast. So
That's
we don't
right.
signal out. So that least favorite guest will just remain secretly a least favorite guest.
Exactly. So the aforementioned Google Doc we have open right now, it says the Work Talk Show episode 101 questions. And let's just, I should probably give in true Work Talk Show fashion, my son Cal is home with me today. It is day 3. If any of you parents out there know how this works with daycare, he got the dreaded, picked him up on Monday and said, so yeah, Cal has a fever. And if anybody, I think all daycares, I'm sure, across at least the United States are like this. It basically means they cannot come back to that school for 24 hours.
24 hours fever-free,
yeah,
as they say.
So the fever-free, as you all know, the trick obviously is Motrin. And so you load him up on enough Motrin, you can get him fever-free for a couple hours. But I decided to keep him home with me, and it's now Thursday when we're recording this, and he still has a little bit of that fever. So he's sitting on the couch watching Cars for the second time today, as any good parent would do. They slam him in front of the TV, and said sarcastically. And so there may be a time where I have to get up and tend to him, or you might hear him, but I don't know. That's kind of how we roll here.
And the other update is that I am also wearing my big boy pants.
Hey now.
Oh wait, that's also Cal.
That's Cal.
I took his update too. So
right. Yeah, so there might be all of a sudden, Daddy, have to pee, or Daddy, just peed.
And you'll have to decode that to see if you can tell if it's Cal or one of us that has decided to just pee in the middle of the 101st episode of the Work Talk Show.
Mr. Westergaard, let's get into, you know what question I didn't add here that I think is actually probably important?
What's that?
For those, unless you, I guess, listened to the first episode or, caught wind of this here and there, I don't think we really ever talked about, maybe in a former host-only show, but how this whole show came about and how we decided to do this and, what the process was. I mean, maybe that's a good way to start things off and just give people an understanding of how it all came about.
DJ, that sounds like a great way to start the 101st episode of the Work Talk Show.
So, Nick, let me ask you, how did this all come about?
Well, it was in the early summer months of 2012. The podcasting renaissance was off to the races, and I was putting on my first ever social media marketing conference, of which DJ was one of the very first guests, one of the very first speakers that we had committed. And like all good event organizers, you try to create some content ahead of time leading up to this. And, I think we'd made a few different videos with you and I, with you, me, and Anne. There she is again here in the history of the Work Talk Show. And we thought, we have a good rapport. This is a lot of fun. I think you had also guest hosted Jay Bear's Social Pros podcast.
That's right. Back with Eric Boggs. Back in the Eric Boggs days. Wow.
And another Boggs connection. So a lot of characters that frequent listeners of the Work Talk Show recognize. And as I recall, after one of those videos, we were having our pithy after video conversation and wrapping up and saying, we should really do some kind of thing together. It would be a lot of fun. And I think it was around this time that a lot of new podcasters were entering the space, jumping in. A lot of the ones that are big today weren't even quite there yet. And we were thinking, okay, we're gonna jump in. We're gonna do this. And I think both of us thought at that time, this is a couple of businesses ago for you, but you being on your own consulting, me consulting, doing agency stuff, you don't have tons of extra time or businesses to underwrite what you're doing. So both of us were thinking, well, we're sure not going to try this on our own since it's all experimental and everything. But if I have someone else, a partner in crime, I could probably do this. So and
I think to build on that, we started going through different ideas and we said, what's this going to be about? And at the time I was knee deep in email marketing stuff, which I did for 10 years of my career. You were, you were getting the Social Brand Forum up and running and obviously thinking about digital marketing and social media marketing and the like. And because of the Social Pros was definitely an inspiration for us, and listening to what Jay and Eric did, and we're doing. And now obviously that's Eric isn't there, and Jeff Roars and Zena Wiest are helping Jay with that podcast. But I think we kind of decided that we didn't really want to just be another marketing podcast. And I remember at one point you said to me, "Well, wouldn't it be cool? Let's do this, and wouldn't it be cool if we had a segment in there that talked about like just our work situation, like how we get work done?" And the more we talked about that, we realized like, whoa, well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, is anybody doing that? And we did a ton of research, also known as none, to determine whether other podcasts out there existed around how people got work done. But we realized that, at some point it didn't really matter if other people were doing it. We were going to do it our own way, and we were excited about doing it. And the rest, kind of as they say, is history. I mean, we certainly had some help with thanks to your team, Nick, as far as setting up the Work Talk Show website, and we had some technical help, as you all know, with our tireless Chief Technical Officer Jess Ostroff at Don't Panic Management. And other than that, we honestly just kind of made it up as we went. I mean, is that true, Nick? I mean, I feel like I didn't study a lot of podcasting before.
I won't necessarily say that, because I think I don't sort of. Because I didn't go out and I'm going to go consume all of the podcasts about work, because there are some other, nobody really, to my knowledge, does what we do here. But there are ones about work and maybe productivity and things like that. But I didn't go out and find those and become an avid listener of those. But the only point of contention I make is I'm still a huge podcast consumer. And I think that, I think those are probably the people that enjoy podcasting the most, are the people that listen and make their own shows. And but I mean, I even these days sometimes listen to less and less work focused or even like marketing business focused shows. I listen to a lot that I just enjoy.
Well, I was going to say, to be clear, it doesn't mean I don't consume podcasts. I think what I meant more is I didn't do a lot of research to like, oh, what's out there? What are the podcasts for people?
Yeah, that's agreed.
Talking about the work, how they get work done. And I remember too, it was a really interesting process too, working on this. I mean, the logo, I think you ultimately designed the logo.
Not
your
me
team.
Personally.
Yeah, your team. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea is, I mean, really, when we set this up, I remember we said we don't have a lot of time. We want to keep this simple. We don't want it to occupy a lot of our time. And that sounds like we didn't want to put effort in, but it wasn't necessarily about effort. It was more, we both had full-time jobs, and we didn't want to make this a full-time job, second full-time job, because we also both have families and we want to have lives. And so, the idea was we're going to keep it simple. I mean, just so you all understand the process. I mean, Nick writes the blog post every week. I edit the audio, and that's kind of our deal. And, I think with matter of a few exceptions, I think I have hosted a show, 1, maybe 2 on my own. You've hosted 3, maybe 4 on your own. We've been consistent almost every Wednesday publishing content for 2 years, which I don't know, Nick. I mean, I guess this is our show, so we can pat each other on the back.
When you say it that way, it sounds pretty good. But I think there's something to be a takeaway there too, and that is, I think at one point you said not to make us sound lazy, but we also did kind of want to be deliberate, and I think that's why we sought each other out to do this together, was because I think both of us detected that the minute this becomes it's going to sound lazy again, but too much work.
Yeah.
Because it was and honestly continues to be another thing. I mean, it does not, we talked about, we purposefully did not do a marketing show, and I still work in marketing, and you did at the time, and you now have another venture that's probably more related of our 2 ventures to the content of this show, but it is something different. So, and we both have families, and making sure that we, could kind of keep this experiment going without it kind of consuming us. And I think we kind of did that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I if we look back to sort of our goals, and this isn't like we had written down goals or anything, but if we look to our goals, I think I'm really happy with what we've been able to accomplish over the last 2+ years, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it really has been a lot of fun. So let's get into some of the questions, Nick.
Yeah,
and then we'll riff from there. But
you have 7 great questions.
7 questions. Question number 1.
That. Yeah,
I will ask you first. And this is like probably the hardest question ever.
I know. Is that the one? Because we should say it fairly for people. It's the favorite episode.
Yeah. What was your favorite episode and why? And here's the deal. Just to make this fair, I will not limit it to one. You can mention several. And your why can be anything. It doesn't have to be because I liked that person, or could be because I liked them, because I liked what they said, because I learned the most from it. I mean, it could be anything. And also, in fairness to other guests, in full disclosure, well, I don't know about you, Nick. I'm not looking at all of our past guests. I'm just kind of doing it from memory. So I don't know. Let's just go. What do you think? What's one of your favorite episodes?
One of my favorite episodes. Because again, the rating system is tricky, because it's like, what are the ones that you learn the most from? And to me, I always am, and looking back at the 2+ years of this, I think those themes that emerge across episodes, like so many people we talk to, have taught me that, man, it'd be hard to not notice that really productive people are doing work really early in the morning. And I'm not, so I should be. But like Dan Rome, there was a great conversation. I actually think that was one that I did solo. So maybe that's why that one sticks out. Maybe I had to work twice as hard.
Or maybe it's because you enjoy it the most because you did it solo.
Exactly. I don't have that DJ here. Thank God. No, but I mean that sticks out a lot. And we also, that's another great example of a show where one of my favorite things on this show occurred, and that is there's just this other conversation that you don't imagine happening. Dan Rome, this great sketch doodling guy. So obviously we talked about drawing, but we also, he talked a lot about, there was one of those side talks that emerged around education, and how, in this country, we really aren't doing that quite as effectively as we should. And that, great little skills that kids, DJ, like yours sitting there, is drawing and scribbling, and we outgrow that stuff and we shouldn't. So that's one that kind of sticks with me. How about you?
God, in true work talk show form, I did not prepare for my own questions that I asked.
I figured you would have. You've got to have like this ace in the hole.
No,
well, it's this guest, and let me tell you why.
But I think you're exactly right. Like, there's no, they're good for different reasons, and I'm going to name a few. I think one of the ones I really enjoyed. This is going to sound a little cliche, maybe, but I really liked the Seth Godin one. And not because he's Seth Godin, he's this marketing maven and all this, but I just liked the process. I mean, I liked how we got him on the show. Nick, you just emailed him directly, like SethGodin@gmail. And he said, yes, now we happen to have a new book coming out.
That's address, so we did not disclose that for anyone. But.
Wait, is that not his address?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. I thought it was something like that.
But Seth, it is like that.
Seth@Godin.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, sure you could find people could find it. It's not like
probably.
Yeah. But to me the idea was like you just emailed him, and again he had a book coming out, so there was something to talk about. But we didn't really talk a lot about his book, and I was amazed that he answers all of his own email. And I also remember taking away. So I've been, a personal disclaimer here. I've been really grappling with this idea of social media lately, and my personal consumption and use of it, and dare I say, addiction with it. In full disclosure, I haven't really told many people this. About a month ago, I deleted Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter apps from my iPhone. And, I kind of bounce into the different social networks here and there, but I'm not nearly using them as much as I used to be. But I remember Seth said something that was so interesting to me. Is he said, so he's somebody who is not on Twitter. He is not on Facebook. I don't believe he's really on any social networks. He doesn't allow comments on his blog. And he said it was very intentional. He said the best way for him to serve his community is to create content. And his version of creating content, as we all know, is mostly books, sometimes webinars, and lots of in-person speaking gigs, which is where he makes all of his money from. Between those three opportunities, and so I remember him saying that's not how he would serve his community best. So he said, imagine if I had comments on my blog, I could spend all day there answering those comments. And there's been a lot of debate, and especially lately around did you have comments on your blog and not? And I just commend him for having that focus. And I think few of us, especially in the social space, are willing to give that stuff up and for fear that our business isn't going to run okay without it. So, I think Seth Godin was a big one for me. It was just kind of neat also to say, like, holy crap, Seth Godin was on our podcast.
That was a thing that happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. So any others jump out at you?
Just in that kind of same space, and I was kind of nerding out and going and flipping through all of the episodes quickly. And right around that same time, we had Guy Kawasaki on the show. And that was obviously, it sounds like we're being name drop Magoos here. But I kind of liked it for a meta reason because we had technical difficulties.
That's right.
And
it was it was the worst technical issues we've had. Yeah,
I know. It's probably one of the least great sounding episodes in terms of audio, but I think that's a great moment, a great moment of humility. There's a big takeaway for that. Like, this is it. I'm all keyed up for it. Sometimes that kind of shit just happens. And I think that the episode was still good, but it's like, it was a great example of one of those things in life that you just get so keyed up for, and maybe we don't need to quite as much.
Yeah, well said, Mr. Nick.
Yeah, well, I try.
So, question. Let's move on because I think we could spend all of this episode talking about some of our favorite guests, and I'm sure they'll creep themselves back into the conversation at some point.
Creepers.
I guess I had next year the best part of starting the podcast. I mean, what was for you? Maybe it's not even starting the podcast. I don't mean starting like in the first couple days. What was it like? But the best. What did you get out of this podcast for the past 100 episodes?
Well, I think we say this probably about every other episode, so it probably shouldn't come as much of a surprise. But like the secret reason of doing this is we get to pick the brains of crazy successful people on how they do what they do. And here you and I are both also something we admit to fairly often, not experts at productivity or how work gets done. And it's a chance to learn. And there's so many different tactics. And some of these have been a great fit and are things that I now do every day. Other things are like, what the hell is that? And then I try it and it works. It surprises me, or it doesn't work at all. It's kind of a great work lab that I love.
Yeah, I remember Mitch Joel, who's been on the show twice and he's like I hate to call him the grandfather because it makes him sound old, but he's the great uncle of podcasting. I remember he talked about it's great. He gets to talk to the smartest people. And I think it's an easy sell for people. We always position, I'm doing this with my Living Your Passion podcast now. It's zero prep. I mean, we tell people, and I told you this before, Nick, and I think I've talked about it on the show. I've had some podcasts that I've been on where people said, fill out this entire form. You've got to send us a copy of your book, signed copy of your book. All these questions before. And we just say to people, listen, it's 35 minutes of your day, time that you can't get back. It'll be fun. It'll be easy. We'll laugh. We'll learn. And, we've had very few people, I think, that we've reached out to that have said outright no.
And honestly, to our credit, and I think this is a cool thing, not just, Nick and DJ are lazy, but we've had a few people that are like, hey, go chase this. And it's like, no. If it's that hard to get you on here, then, it's because it is. Like you said, there are a lot harder podcasts to be on. And I think that has a lot of value.
Yeah. And I guess I would add they're the best part in, this is where I'm going to get a little emotional. But honestly, I've gotten to know you and your family a little bit better, Nick. I mean, it's exciting. Sometimes we record a couple in a day. Sometimes it's a few weeks before we record. But I really always look forward to, it's sort of like my time to talk, not directly with you, but to chat with you. And that's just neat. It's neat that it's not just through social media. It's not just through phone. It's like a different medium that we can have a conversation about something that really affects all of us.
Well, and other than the period of time where you were at Marketo, we are both home officers, and I don't have coworkers that are here in and around, around my workplace. So that's why these episodes are always very special, because it's like, time to talk with you, which is always awesome. And then, you work someone like Mitch Joel or John Jantz or Jenny Dietrich in there. And it's kind of a neat little water cooler that we've created.
Well, and to that point, too, I think you started mentioning some guests. I mean, a lot of these, when we first started, we went with our circle of people that we knew from the marketing and social media space and had some amazing guests on. I mean, just the people that you've already mentioned. But I thought what was really neat is we started to expand and get people that we had never heard of. I mean, remember that guy, I can't think of his name now, but he works from a cave in Spain.
Yes.
We had Mish and Rob Slade who work, travel around the country and work in different places, and the married couple. We had...
And Derry Carey.
Derry Carey, that's right. We had Derry Carey on, who's like a dairy farmer. Yeah. And we had, you look back, Nick, and we had some pretty cool people on, and different people. I mean, the Schechtners, Michelle, and oh my God, they're going to listen to it.
Alex,
I'm so sorry.
Nick was the one that knew DJ didn't.
No, well, here's the thing. Michelle messaged me on Facebook the other day. Actually, she messaged me while I was not checking Facebook for 10 days, saying that she was going to be in the area, and I got back and I was like, oh, missed you. Although I was in Buffalo the whole time, but so sorry, Alex. But and I think what was neat too is people started recommending the Work Talk Show guests, and we had some different publishers who would say, "Hey, I've got somebody I'm working with. They'd be a great guest." And I look back, and we had a pretty diverse group of people. And we had Ace Callwood, who spells his name capital A, capital C. You don't get that every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had. We brought our circle of marketing folks, and then I think after that we got people like Ace, an entrepreneur startup type, obviously a very different way of working. In there we got workplace productivity people, Stephen Kotler. I think of one of those who, here we, it was a great opportunity. Someone that is honestly an expert in quote work talk. Here on the show.
Yeah, for sure. Lots of just really smart people. So I think we've kind of answered this one, but if you want to add any more to it, number 3 we've got here is, what did you get out of the show personally and professionally? I mean, I think we've kind of hit on that. If there's...
Well, personally, we did kind of touch on. Professionally, I mean, a lot of these people, it's like another step, like we've talked about before, these different ways of getting to know each other and getting social and knowing people, and even outside the marketing realm that, we talk a lot about. But, you meet people online, and then that is a means of meeting them in person. And, I was able to, so many people that we've had on the show, I've been able to, then the next time I go up to an event and I see Mitch Joel, we have a connection. We have things that we can talk about because of the show. And, other people that end up as, speakers at our events too, have started as guests on the Work Talk Show. So.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I mean, for me, it hasn't translated yet into true business opportunities, but I feel comfortable basically reaching out or contacting any of our past 90-some guests if the need arose, and I feel like when you have somebody on your show and you're talking to them about how they get work done we always get into the personal stuff. It's not just professional conversations. I think it makes it that much easier if and when to reach out and say, hey, I'd love, can you help me with this, or how can I help you, and really have a more genuine conversation, because we've had almost that, I don't want to say intimate, but we've had more of an intimate conversation than just a casual social media conversation, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that I talk about being a podcast consumer, and two of my favorite podcasts are Mark Maron's WTF and the Nerdist podcast, and they're both long form interview shows, and we're not quite that, but we always try to get into 20. Both those shows are an hour or more, and we try to get into 25, but we usually end up at about 35, 40. Today's going to be a little longer, but I do think when you talk like this, when you are a little longer than maybe your standard, 20-minute show, and we are talking about life a little bit more, I think you do start to get reinforcing your point, one of Nick Westergaard's non-questions, but reinforcing that point that it is that kind of deeper connection too, beyond than just a quick chat.
So, Nick, this one is not in the questions, but I just was thinking about it, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, and maybe this is going to be all me talking, but some of the quirky things that you and I do that are I guess become part of the show that I don't know, become somewhat endearing, and I'll tell you what I mean in a second. I'll give you some examples. I'll never forget early on when you talked about. I said we're doing. I think it was with Tom Webster. Maybe it was the very first one. It might have been the very first one. You said something about Tom Webster as a researcher or something. Or you talking about some research thing, and I said, "You mean research?" So
true.
That was always one of my favorites. And then I always tease Nick for the number of times he says "interesting." It'd be interesting some point to count up. If anybody wants to do that, by the way, volunteer. Go through all the past episodes and count the number of times Nick has said "interesting." That would be fun.
That sounds like a great research project.
And speaking of that, let me segue to, that's another thing that Nick is famous for, is his segues. And we had always talked about getting Segway as a sponsor on the show. Unfortunately, it never happened for more so reasons that we never actually contacted Segway. Are they still in business? I don't even know.
That's what I was going to ask. We make that joke.
Yeah.
And it could be a really dated joke because I'm not sure they're even a going concern anymore.
Yes. Good question. By the way, my son has been eerily quiet, which means he's either asleep on the couch peeing through his big boy pants right now, or he is so deep into Cars 2 that he doesn't know where he is.
Well, DJ, I'm sitting here and I've soiled my big boy pants. So
well, haven't we all? Time and time again. So, no, I just was, more kind of teasing you, but there's a couple things that I always pick up from the show that, that you did. Any quirkiness of DJ that you want to get me back at for?
Quirkiness
like
of
being really
DJ.
quiet right now?
Well, the quiet thing is funny because it's like I would say one thing that and this is not, I don't think this is one of the questions. We're sometimes good. No, we're mostly good, but we have like two modes of either, and we've especially been running into like not, we used to talk over each other a lot and kind of learning some of the give or take, but lately we've had a couple where we've almost gone to being too polite. Yeah. And we leave these kind of big, are you going to go?
Right. Well, so a little inside baseball stuff too. Nick and I. So there's different podcasts. The Jason Surfer app and his Paul Jarvis. The podcast that they did for season 1, Invisible Office Hours. They actually recorded via Skype, just like Nick and I do, but they leave the video on so that they're looking at each other, which we've never done. I think we've talked about doing, but to me, it's too distracting. Like I just feel weird. I don't know. There's something weird about it, and less radio podcasty if you're looking at somebody. But
plus, the other simple reason we do this via Skype, and that kind of usually makes Skype calls go from great to not so good to even worse.
Very true. Very true. But I think some inside baseball is that lots of times Nick and I will text each other during the show and say something like, "Hey, should we wrap up?" Or "Did you get that?" Or actually, a lot of times I say, "Isn't this guest amazing? Can we talk to him
go forever. This is awesome."
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's hard. That's one of the hard things about doing this stuff is that, I don't know. I think we've learned a lot along the way. To your point, in the beginning, we probably talked over each other a lot more. And we didn't really, we didn't plan this out to say, like, you ask the first question, then you ask. We just sort of do it naturally and organically. And for the most part, it's worked out pretty well. So, Nick, let's go into the next. Did I ask that? Oh, yeah, least favorite part of the podcast. What are the things about the podcast that drove you bonkers? I know one.
You know one of mine or one of yours?
For sure.
What was one of mine? Oh, I got to go with your answer first. Oh, I mean, that was like both of ours, too.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
scheduling sucks.
It's not easy. And, we're not in the same time zone either. So that is 2 by default. So that also means, even like I realized when I tossed out times for this one, it's like one was either in the afternoon for me, which is midday for you. And the other one was like early morning for me, which would have been a crazy, ridiculous hour for you. I don't even know why I included that.
I almost wrote back to you like, dude, 7 a.m.
The hell?
Not
Seriously?
a great time in my house.
Nor mine. And if it would have been the other way, but I just...
Well, imagine that, though. So we've got that, and then we've got a guest to add. And the guest could be, we had somebody in Spain, I don't know what the hell time zone that is. Spain time zone.
Yeah.
So I think, there's Cal. Hey, little buddy. He just looked at me and
still here.
Made a face like,
nah.
Go to hell. Leave me alone. I just pooped my pants.
Scheduling is probably the least favorite, and that's a nice safe one. And honestly, even when you misquoted that as being the least favorite guest, I honestly don't know. And we don't have to use names. Was there any guest that you think that was just not even worth our time?
And the honest answer is no, and here's why I can say that.
Don't think so either.
I can say that honestly, though, because I have said this to you. I do the same thing with Living Your Passion podcast. There is nothing that says we have to hit publish on a podcast. If it sucks, if we believed it sucked, if we believed it wasn't worthy of being published, we just wouldn't publish it. That's the truth. Like, I'm looking at Living Your Passion now, and I don't necessarily go in order. I record a bunch, and I try to pick and choose which one seems to make sense, but if it sucks, I'm not going to publish it. It's not worth it, right? So,
well, I think they've got to clear a couple hurdles first because they submitted some sort of an email, and then there's usually a conversation if it's someone that we don't know that takes place like this. You think there's anything interesting? Yeah, sort of. And if there's some sort of nugget, and we had a few where we said, I don't see it. It doesn't sound. So if it was something that we hit record on, there was something that at least made us perk up. And all of these, I think that was back to my favorite point of just the unexpected things. Like, who'd have thought we were going to get? I had no clue we were going to be talking about, travel or kids or education or something.
Yeah, and that's what people. I don't know that everybody knows that about the show. We kind of joke about it several different episodes, but we really don't plan. And part of that is because we want it to be organic. I remember we had people said, like, can you submit the questions to us in advance? I'm like, sure. What's your name? Always we don't even ask that because we know their name already. But
what do you do and how do you do it?
Right. And that's sort of our question. So, but yeah, just back to the scheduling. I know talking to Tom Webster, he's relaunching his podcast, The Friday Five, and he said for a while he didn't do it because, come here, little buddy. Okay. We can either pause, Nick, or I'm just here. Come sit on my lap.
Okay.
Oh, and yes. Okay. My pants are now wet.
Oh.
All right. We'll clean that up in a minute. So we may or may not edit this out.
Ooh, I was going to say, at the very least, you have to keep that little snippet in it. Oh, my pants are wet. Like nothing else in the secret show afterwards except that one little snippet of you saying, my pants are wet.
Exactly. And that means I have to change the jeans that I've worn every day this week. Darn it. So I don't know where I was going with this, but Nick, a couple other questions here. If we were to start from day one on the Work Talk show and, tomorrow is day one, you're doing a new podcast and, what would you do differently with the setup of the podcast, the process, the guests, the whatever?
Well, you mentioned Tom Webster, who's restarting one of his 2 podcasts, and I think he talked about this, on Facebook recently. The one, I say one of his 2 because he does one with Mark Schaefer, also a guest, and they don't have another guest. And they're 2 guys, between the 2 of them, they're in 2 time zones already. So they've made a point to not have a guest, and it's more a show about their rapport back and forth. And then Tom's other show, The Friday Five, which is fun about music, and you should go check it out. He does have a guest, and he very carefully designed that and kind of, stopped doing it for a while, called it, season 1, and has been recording season 2. And then once he had enough batched, he's starting up again here with the next season. And I think that's a really great approach. It's a really honest approach. It's a real, it's doing what you can there. And this is my roundabout way of saying what I would do differently is you have to come up with, if you're going to be guest based, you have to, like all things, I mean, if you're going to come from our world of sales and marketing, it's a funnel and you got to keep it full.
Yep. Well, it's interesting because I actually learned that lesson before I launched Living Your Passion. And I've mentioned this a few times already in this show. I pre-recorded it. I mean, I pre-recorded 5 or 6 before I launched. I launched with 3 in the hole, and then I had another 3. I actually, at this point, I have so many great episodes. I publish twice a week, which some people think that's crazy. Actually, one person said to me, "It's too many. I can't keep up." And I was like, "Well, you don't have to listen to every one.
Get better."
But so I've definitely done that, and now I'm like 12 in advance, and it's nice to have that cushion. So like this week, because of Cal, as you can hear, you need a tissue. I know, here. Let me just wipe it on Daddy's pants. They're already wet.
There you go.
But, the idea is I'm now 12 in the hole, and because I was home with Cal most of the week, I canceled many of the podcasts I had, was set to record, and it wasn't a big deal. I didn't feel that pressure. And I think you and I, got to the point different weeks where we're like, oh, crap, who are we on this week? And then it was like, we didn't want to scramble to find a guest. We didn't want to get just anybody. And then, I know I felt that pressure, as in the last probably 20 episodes. Don't get me wrong. I loved the guests we ended up having, but we did end up skipping some weeks. And I remember feeling so guilty about that at first. Like, we've never skipped a week. How could we skip a week? But we did. And you know what? Life goes on.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, that's back to like the Guy Kawasaki law that, I guess the easier way to say that is it's the shit happens, I mean, we're like marketing best practices guys. So, we get up there at the front of the room and talk about all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you might not have a show. The world's going to keep rotating and you're going to get back on the horse. And I think that's everyone's fear is that if you slow down with any of this stuff, then I'm going to quit and I'm not going to go anymore. Like my son missed chess club this morning and he had like a minor freak out. He was up in the middle of the night and he kind of slept late. And that was his big fear. It was, if I miss once, I'll keep missing.
Yeah.
And I think as grown-ups, we have that too.
But that's a valid concern. I mean, it's a slippery slope. You don't publish one week, you don't publish the next. I think that's definitely a challenge when it comes to stuff. And that's why I do pat ourselves on the back, the fact that we have done 100 episodes and been really relatively consistent. A quick Cal update. He is on my lap. His head is on the table, and he is fast asleep.
Great. I have still soiled myself, so we're all on the same page. Solidarity is the most important part of the Work Talk Show.
I was going to say, Nick, what was I going to say about doing things differently, too? Yeah, definitely having, I know, sponsorships. Jesus, right?
I think you have to know what you're doing, but here's my story about that. I'm having a Zen Thursday, which is really strange for me.
Hashtag Zen Thursday?
Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, if your point is, it's to have a plan for that too. But funny thing, I talk about being a podcast consumer, and my new passion and probably my shout out is the Serial podcast from the folks at This American Life. That is this serialized telling, reporting of this true crime. And it's like the #1 podcast. Everybody loves it. They're rabid. This is their first season. And they really don't have a plan for monetizing it.
Yeah.
And they have some sponsor-ish types, but there's some of the usual podcast sponsor players. But the only thing I'm saying there is I have certainly wrung my hands over that a great deal, but I also don't know that it's an uncommon thing. I think a lot of people do, but I also think that that's why then if it's not going to be something that is sponsored by this external source, then I think that in some capacity, you have to have some other path, some other way it contributes. Like You're Living Your Passion is a very clear feeder to your Coach DJ efforts.
I was going to go to the next question, but I think this is possibly one of the best segues in the history of the Work Talk Show.
That's a tall order.
We talk about, having a plan and having time. And I think we've kind of alluded to a lot of things in here. And, for me at least, and hopefully for you, the listener, the $1 million question is, what's next? What happens? I mean, Nick and I have talked about some of our struggles and talked about not really having a concrete plan. We both have talked about loving doing this and having a great time, but also the struggles with scheduling and different time zones and it not necessarily tying directly into our businesses. I mean, certainly it's more tied into your business, Nick, and we talked about some of the benefits, but I guess it's a good time to kind of talk about the what's next. And I'll just lead here, Nick, with what you and I have talked about. But the plan for now is to sort of go on hiatus. And we use the word hiatus because, Nick and I talked about all the different options. We could keep going as is, which really wasn't sustainable for us. I think both of us were feeling some pressure, anxiety, frustration around, the scheduling and the pressure of every week. And, that the option of going, doing things as is was not really an option. The other thought was we just, we kind of, retire and end the show, kind of like for those sports fans out there. I think of Barry Sanders, like when he went out on top, he retired at like age 28, I feel like.
or George Costanza leaving the meeting after a good idea. Thanks.
Exactly. Probably a better pop culture reference than my Barry Sanders one. But and we thought, and I think for both of us, that was definitely a possibility, but there was a little bit of that. I know, at least for me, I know my thought was kind of sadness around that because at the end of the day, it is just a podcast, but we've put a lot into this and we've had a lot of fun with it. And so I think where we ended is that we decided we're going to go on a hiatus. So certainly the rest of the month of December, we will not be publishing anything. I mean, I think at this point, January is probably not going to happen. But we're going to kind of talk about it, just take a break. It's almost like, in a relationship, I guess, we take a break and we reevaluate and see. And I think if we do decide to do it again, we'll make some changes. I don't think the content necessarily will change, but the process and the, maybe how often we publish and what type of guests and that sort of thing might change. So, Nick, what else you want to add to that? I mean, that's kind of my take on what happens next.
Damn it, DJ, you said it so perfectly. But no, that's absolutely right. I mean, I don't, I think a couple of times we've been talking about this for a few weeks. We've kind of carefully used our verb tenses, but, it's not to say that we are, that this is the series finale. But it is a hiatus. And I think that, we're leaving the future of the Work Talk Show open-ended because I think, like you said, we have a lot of fun doing it. But we're both small business people. And I think, the other thing, I talk about getting up early and some of these themes that, have echoed throughout various shows. And I mean, you talk about Seth Godin and the comments and, talking about what you choose to do and not do. And I think we've also had a lot of people that have talked about focus. And at the end of the day, DJ, you have your business and I have mine. And, what efforts are focusing on, moving that down the field and what's best for everybody's family and gets things there. And again, it's not to say that there won't be a future of the Work Talk Show, but it will just change a bit.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. I mean, as listeners out there, I mean, obviously we wouldn't have this podcast without you. And I know we haven't really talked a lot about that, but if you do have thoughts, suggestions, feedback, ideas, I mean, we're open to them. I think originally Nick and I had an idea of like, well, let's hear from our audience and let's hear what they think. But this is a personal decision for Nick and I, and I guess you could say a business decision in some ways. But we're open to hearing. Like, listen, if you want to, email us info@worktalkshow, and we'll, we'd like to hear what you think. Just know that we're, between the two of us, we're pretty confident that this is what we want to do next, and we want to leave the door open for possibilities. I guess it's sort of like Michael Jordan retiring. He could come back.
I think about it more, even though it's not a real great sign because he hasn't come back. But like the Larry David series, Curb Your Enthusiasm on HBO. The question: will they make more? And it's this improvised show, pretty easy to put together, and it would come back in kind of bursts. And I think it's more like that. I think it's something that we'd like to get back to and find a way to make it work. But for right now, like you said, I think we're both kind of confident in what we're doing here.
Let's get into the couple last segments. Something that we actually we're going to do this first, I think, and I already screwed up the order. But we asked our guests, this idea of the 3 apps they can't live without, and let's do our own version of that. I think we've talked about it here and there, but as of today, the recording, I don't know, December 4th or something. What are the 3 apps, Nick, that you are like? Your world would just be so different without them.
I believe because we added this feature midway through the run of the Work Talk show, and I want to say we actually have answered this once before. So it would be interesting for any people to go back and like compare if we've been at all consistent in any of this. But I'll go ahead and share mine. I'm pretty sure 2 of mine are the same. I can't remember what the third one was. Fitbit has changed my life. I don't say that lightly. Speaking of lightly, there's another one of those winning segues. But I've lost some weight, and I'm not you talked to Chris Brogan like we did last week. That's a guy who knows so much about fitness. I really, honestly know nothing. And this little app tells me if I eat this much, if I move this much, it can help me weigh this much, and that's tremendously helpful. Evernote, which I love. And also, I'm going to give a shout to the podcast app, because I think before that, it was harder to manage and listen and be a podcast consumer. And, I love podcasts, love talking on them, love listening to them, and I spend a lot of time doing that. So I love the podcasts app.
All right, so my 3, I'm sure I've talked about this one before. This seems like a silly one, but it's so important for somebody like me who is directionally challenged. I've literally walked out my door and gone the wrong way before. So for me, without a doubt, Google Maps. I also use the Apple iPhone Maps app once in a while. I sometimes use Waze, but Waze is now integrated with Google Maps for the most part. So any kind of maps application just gets me from point A to B. I like to know how long it's going to take me. Google Maps now has a really cool feature where they'll show you could be in the middle of your trip and it'll say, you can save 5 minutes faster by going this way. And so I just love that. In fact, we're cutting off in a few minutes because I got to go to the Apple store because my iPhone 6 screen has somehow shattered. It's weird when you drop it on pavement in a parking lot. Sometimes that happens, especially
they do that.
Yeah. So I got to go to the Apple store and I thought it was going to be a half hour wait. Turns out it's 17 minutes. So, I know exactly how long. And so for me, that's a big one. I don't think I said this before, but the camera app for me, I've got 2 young kids and I use the crap out of that thing. I've also been doing a lot of video lately. So the camera/video app has really, it's just, in the iPhone 6 too, it's just the video quality and the camera quality is just ridiculously good. So that has been a big one for me. And I'll go with Evernote again. I use Evernote for, I put all of, when I do the Coach DJ Friday emails and I do the Social Butterfly Guy Waldo Weekly Was Update. I use that to capture ideas so I know what I'm going to write so I don't just have this blank slate when I go to open that. So I use that a ton. So Evernote as well. So Nick, I think this is, at least for now, our final shout out and plug.
I know that's
in true form. I have to go with you first.
I know again. All right, I'm going to true to the name, give both a shout out and shameless plug. I will give a shout out to our most recent guest comment here on Twitter, Kelly Hungerford, who caught something that. I'm glad to know I'm not the only crazy person out there, as I grabbed both Anne and Chris's headshot for last week's show art and smushed them together because there are 2 of them. The head tilts on their headshots are almost identical. It is amazing. The angles match. It is crazy to look at. And Kelly Hungerford also noticed that. Big shout to Kelly. And my shameless plug that we just announced yesterday, it will be a week after the fact when this show airs, but we have plotted out our entire 2015 event series. So you can go check that out at branddrivendigital.com, Social Brand 15, and mini a boot camp and some new courses and all kinds of fun stuff there.
Now, is it a boot camp or is it in a boot camp?
A butte?
A boot.
I don't know. It would be the
Canadian.
Canadian thing.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do shout-outs and plugs. Shout-outs, I don't know. If this ends up being our last show, I guess I would be remiss if I didn't give shout-outs to our listeners. I know it sounds kind of cliche and cheesy, but it's really true. We have some people who listen to every show, like the Dave Cutlers out there and
Sean Carpenter.
Sean Carpenter, that's right. Adam Silver. I'm trying to think of other people who listen to. Sadie Cornelius listens to quite a few, and the Schenkers, Alex and Michelle. I know Michelle listens. Alex, I don't know about you. I'm not sure. But there's lots of people who have, that are regular listeners. And for that, I really, and Nick and I both really appreciate that. It means a lot to us. And also to Nick, it's like I said in the beginning, it's been great to get to know you, and this is certainly not the last time we're going to be talking, but it might be the last time.
I will never take your calls or texts anymore.
Well, you never take my calls, that's the truth. But texts are fine, yeah. And I guess those are my shout outs, and obviously to all the different guests we've had. I mean, I have to add them up, but some have been host only shows, but we've had at least 90 guests so far. Yeah. And that's just amazing to think about the number of really, as we always say, talking to wicked, or what do we say? I don't remember what it's called. Crazy smart guests. Jesus.
Wrong Boston expression for two.
Well, I was looking at a picture of Ann and Chris, who are both in Boston. That's my excuse. But to those all the different guests we've had in the past too, and so my final plug, if I've transitioned my career, and since I've been on the Work Talk Show several times, I've had 4 different jobs in the last 2 years, I feel like. And I've now moved into the thing that I'm really passionate about, is helping people rediscover their passion, helping people to quit the job that they hate and rediscover the job that they're going to be more excited about and happy about and all that stuff. So, I guess my plug is for Coach DJ and for what I'm doing around helping people. So if you're interested, if you hate what you do, if you're listening to the Work Talk Show and you say, listen, the best part of my week is listening to the Work Talk Show, then it's probably time to go to coach-dj.com and sign up for a free consult call. It's literally free. It's 22 minutes. That's it. All right, Nick, I guess you wrap from here? I don't know.
I will wrap it up, and I will say that we will link up to everything that we just talked about in our show notes, which you can find at worktalkshow.com, as well as information for how to connect with us via various social networks. Why would you do that if we're putting the show on hiatus? Because that is a great way for finding us and telling us, like DJ said, if you have some ideas for where might be an interesting place to take the show, something we could do differently if and when we emerge from hiatus. So definitely go find us on those social networks. Complete the contact form there at worktalkshow.com. Also, if you want to find episodes of the show, all 101 of them, you can go to iTunes, Stitcher Radio, RSS, subscribe to the show, all of those different ways. It's also a great reminder to hop over and give a quick rating or review, either for this show or for DJ's other podcasts, the Living Your Passion podcast, the Social Brand Chat podcast, or all the other podcasts by great folks that have been past guests, Gary O'Shea, Gorgone, and others. And finally, a big and perhaps final shout out to Chief Technical Officer Jess Ostroff over at Don't Panic Management. I can't say until next week, because until a date that is yet to be determined, I'm Nick Westergaard.
And I'm DJ Waldo.
And until then, we'll see you on the internet. God damn it, why?
I literally have urine on my pants, and
so do I.
On my shorts. On my shirt. And Cal, during that time, woke up miraculously after a 2-minute power nap and is now back on the couch. That's probably also wet. My iPhone 6 screen is still shattered. My mom's flight is delayed, and she might not get here tonight. So lots has happened in this past hour, Nick.
I was going to say, that's a little cray, yeah.
A little cray. Cray, if you will.
That's what they say.
Well, I guess this is possibly our last not-so-secret show, too, and I don't know. Does anybody listen to these things?
The podcast in general, or the secret
the not-so-secret show? I hope they listen. I always have fun in this part of it. I mean, I feel like we our guests especially kind of let their guards down. Not that all of our guests really are guarded in what they say, but
Well, you talk about what would you do differently, and I'm just random podcast thing, but we had a pretty slick intro and outro, and I talk about Nerdist. But those ones, you sometimes hear the person walking in and like getting situated, and should I sit up here? And and then they end it, and they're kind of like you can hear them in the background talking afterwards. And I think that I like that. I was on podcast verite approach.
I was on. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't that one. I think I was on a podcast recently where they did an intro and then they literally Skyped me in like partway through. So I wasn't even on the beginning. I think we tried to do that at the beginning. Didn't we do that? Didn't we have our guests? They were quiet the first 7 minutes. Oh my God. Why did we do that?
Well, and it's funny because right around that time, we were asking everyone's advice, like on what to do. How do you make for a good podcast? We talked about Jay Bear, and it was right around the time we started, and we had a few shows in the can.
Yeah.
That he said, "Oh, get them on right away." He's like, "We just learned that because he only." I mean,
that's right. That was a Jay Bear thing. Yeah.
But I believe he only had because he started in January of that year, so 9-10 months lead on us. But that was something that is like, oh God, don't do that. We've learned that lesson, and just get right to the guest. I think was his succinct feedback, and that was something that 2-3 episodes in, we're like, oh God, yes, yeah, just
Nick. I hate to do this. I really do have to go now because 17 minutes means I'm going to get there at 16 minutes after the hour. So 4 minutes early if I leave now, and I still have wet pants, wet shirt, wet couch, wet kid.
I trust there's some app telling you that, but that's fine.
Yes, I have the wet app right now.
The wet app.
It's telling me, it's indicated all places in our house that have urine on them.
Get out of here.
All right, see you, man.
All right, bye-bye.
This has been The Work Talk Show. For the latest show notes and linky goodness, visit us online at worktalkshow.com. Remember, you can subscribe to the show and leave a review at iTunes. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.